So welcome. My name is Kurt Jem. I'm with Century Commercial, and this is the New Norm episode 5. So we've been bringing to you certain CRE, commercial real estate related industry leaders, and I'm happy to welcome David Glissman to our episode today. David is a prominent attorney in Hartford, and he joins us today to talk about what the new norm looks like, from his firm's perspective. How did they pivot? How did that work out? What it looks like today, because we're now 7 months, I think, believe it or not, Dave, 7 months into this.
Wow.
What we hoped was a long snowstorm. Clearly, it's not. And so we're curious about that. And then we want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the legal world relative to landlords and tenants and what's happening. So welcome, Dave Glissman, to the show.
Heck yeah, and thanks very much. It's pretty interesting how our world has progressed. Man, it is wild, but thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Happy to have you. So listen, the first thing I wanted to kind of hit on is if you could just take a couple minutes to talk about the firm and where you're at, because you guys have grown over the years and you have a hustling practice, and we are interested to see, how did you guys pivot? What did you guys look like pre sort of quarantine shutdown, and what do you look like today, and how are you adapting to that?
Yep. Well, thanks. So we are, a 11 attorney commercial real estate boutique shop. We have an office here in Connecticut. We have one down in North Carolina. And as it turns out, we have 11 additional offices spread throughout the suburbs of Hartford and North Carolina, because that's where all of our attorneys are these days.
Perfect.
So it really was just fascinating to me, because kind of the second the crisis hit, we knew we were shutting down. But we had, I'm pleased to say, positioned ourselves. We didn't really know we were doing it, but we had positioned ourselves, and we quickly adapted. And this is the interesting thing, because we truly adapted. And the adaptation has in and of itself become a new norm for us. And that adaptation was this. Every attorney in our law firm has a home office. They all have computers. The computers are all directly linked into our server here. So their computer and what they see at home is identical to what they see here in the office. First time I've been in the office in a while, by the way. And I did it for you, Kurt, because I just wanted to look like a real lawyer for at least one day. And then we have our phones, that we have here in the office are fully integrated to each of our homes. So what we did, so that it seems like a seamless operation, is we shut our office down. We had only one person, our secretary, our primary secretary, come in, working our switchboards, copying, PDFing us things, sending packages out. When you call our office, the same person who's always answered and that answers the phone. She says, "Oh, sure, you want to talk to Dave?" Boom, you're on the phone with Dave. As far as you know, I'm downstairs where I am right now, and I'm pulling up on my screen everything that you need. And what we have learned is that we can operate at the same level that we previously operated in this new setting. We have lawyers that come in because they have maybe big honking things that they need to work on and spread out. But other than that, pretty much everyone is kind of working from home. And so now, how has that progressed out into the rest of our lives as it relates to work? So call us the financial services industry, right? Accountants, lawyers, consultants, that kind of thing. We're meeting with people, we're consulting with them, we're advising them as one category. Well, most of that now is all, cell phone, Zoom calls occasionally, etc. You call here, you think you're talking to me downstairs, you're really talking to me at home. And our clients are kind of doing the same thing. If they really insist on meeting, which is not often, we're trying to meet outdoors. So we've had document executions on the back porch of our building. We've had closings on the hoods of cars. I had a client that insisted on meeting me in person to start a new deal. We met at Elizabeth Park. I took 2 big chairs, set them out, TV trays. I set a a notepad and a water bottle on his. It was an office. It looked like a freaking
That's
office
awesome.
under a tree. And so now we have hearings that we're attending on the land use side and on the court side. Those are now via Zoom. And I had a kind of a really big hearing, and the judge just 2 weeks ago, and the judge goes, "Gosh, you guys, I apologize. It's taking a long time, but I've never had such a big hearing on Zoom. There's a ton of you on this thing, and I know you all want to talk." We've had these land use hearings where it's been very difficult, for the technology to kind of get everybody in, but the agencies are kind of doing a good job of it. So, in addition to all of us kind of learning how to work from home, how to meet with clients in different ways, the balance of the system is kind of dragging itself along with these virtual. We're going to have a virtual closing starting tomorrow, and it's going to finish on Monday. We'll do most of it by Zoom and by escrow. And we have, for example, our North Carolina office. Not that it really matters, but I've got the guy who's going to Zoom in and talk to the client because he's the one that's been talking to the client when he signs the documents. So
Sure.
we're finding that kind of is working. So what I'm sort of learning from all of this is that the new norm seems to be that mandatory office presence is out and now an alternative. Retail shopping is often now a home-based kind of shopping. So we're seeing in the world now sort of an impact, which maybe we'll talk about in a minute if we have time, on how that's affecting the office market, the retail market, to name a few. But people are adapting. One last thing I want to say, and then I'll actually let you talk, Kurt, for a change.
It's my show.
I just be quiet. I'm trying to talk, Kurt. Is that I don't think it's necessarily good what's happening. So as an owner of this law firm, what I see is people working alone, people working from home, people not feeling a part of an organization, committed to that organization and its success. I can almost see a movement to, this is all about me, I don't really need you. There's this banter that happens in the office. What's going on in your life,
Of course,
good,
yeah.
bad, and otherwise, that builds a team. And so even when this is over, and I know that the new norm isn't going to be like the old norm, for me, I'm going to insist that our lawyers are in the office, enough of the time so that we feel integrated, that we feel like a team, and that we are one team, instead of a bunch of individual ones.
Yeah, Dave, you make a good point there. I think that's important. And in talking with Mark Duclo, president of Century, who well, we are making a commitment to a new space in downtown, and it's slightly larger in size than what we have, because we also were able to do a pivot to a virtual environment because we were set up to do that. Our systems, our technologies, were in place to be able to do that. But what you do lose, the good point that you made is that culture is how do you maintain culture? And, we as human beings were not meant to be kept in captivity, so to speak. And we do derive an important part of our life in having those human exchanges. So I think that's been the biggest challenge, certainly across Hartford and Connecticut and the rest of the country is, regardless of whether you enjoy working from home or not, it's difficult to create that camaraderie and that collaboration. Where Hartford was being very successful over the past 2 or 3 years in bringing cohorts together for startup companies. And there's 4 or 5 different cohorts where we have probably 100 startups coming through the market. And so Hartford, now having been really shut down for a period of time with many of those larger companies not coming back, it's hard to create that community. And it's so important to the vibrancy of us as practitioners in certain commercial real estate businesses, as well as what you see in Hartford, to continue with that sort of robust eco cycle that was happening there. So let's shift over because it's interesting. Several companies said that they're not coming back to Hartford until after the first of the year. Uh, we were dealing with some residential uh, 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 operations that were getting built, and so those have slowed down a little bit. But tell me what you're seeing from the standpoint of tenant and landlord relations. Obviously there was some abatements happening.
Yeah.
What do you do now? Do you pay rent? Do you not pay rent? Are you struggling? Are you, where is the suffrage? And how have you moved through that? Because when we started this, it was sort of, there were more questions than answered. We started this back in April, and now we're 4 or 5 months into it. So now you can see plans evolving. So what are you seeing there from an industry perspective, and how are your clients adapting to that?
Well, it was very interesting because you were absolutely right. Because early on, when this thing first hit, it was just pure chaos. I mean, it was pure chaos. Everybody was coming out of the woodwork. They were all asking for abatements. They were all threatening everything that you could possibly threaten. Most of the arguments were ridiculous, but it didn't really matter because everybody knew that they were in trouble because everything was shutting down. So all of the landlords, by and large, most all the landlords immediately jumped into, okay, we're going to give you a couple months or 3 months, and you can pay it back over time. And there was this tremendous documentation that happened associated with that. Forms, and they started just doing it quick and dirty once their systems were set up. So what kind of happened after that is a couple of things. So the first thing is, it seems clear that all the lenders have been kicking the can down the road, just like they did in the prior recession. They know, that this too shall pass, and so for the most part, they're granting fairly generous extensions to their clients, and well, maybe except for some of the big Wall Street ones, but by and large, most lenders are, and letting them know that if they need more time, come back and talk. So that's pretty good. The second thing is they've really tightened up their lending requirements. So they're pregnant with all these deals. They're being pretty good with their clients, but then in terms of new lending, it's much tighter. It's much harder to get money out there. Then in terms of, sort of the markets, retail just seems like it's just gone silent. There's some stuff, but we're just not seeing any kind of new deals. It seems like industrial, commercial seems to be pretty active. Apartments, believe it or not, seem to be pretty active. So what we're kind of seeing, is apartments, industrial, commercial, a fair amount of work in those areas. Some financings where you have apartments or quality tenants, and a lot of the other stuff is kind of not really seeing much action, at least from where I sit. What we are seeing is the frenzy of activity associated with tenants afraid they're going to go under seems to have quieted down. And we thought what we would see was a lot of tenants crashing down at the 6-7 month mark. The abatements had kind of ended, and we were expecting tons of phone calls, kind of gearing up in our work outside. But we haven't seen that. It seems as though landlords and tenants are continuing to work with each other. It's maybe some of that COVID money helped get them through, etc. We thought a lot of our apartment complex owners would be crashing and burning, and their tenants seem to continue to be paying. The better apartment complexes. I don't know about the kind of the low end stuff. We're not very involved in that. So I feel like those are the kinds of things that we expected to see crash and burns on, and we didn't. So I think that's good, because I think what the market is saying is, I think we're going to survive this. There is an end to this, and we're not going to throw in the towel, because I think we can do it. Now, we have seen a number of failures, but they're the kind of ones that were on the edge anyway, and it didn't take much to push them over, so they've kind of failed, and we've dealt with a number of those. What we are seeing between landlords and tenants is ongoing discussions about renegotiating, extensions and things like that. And now tenants savvy to things like this are really fighting heavily over force majeure, which was the clause like that was like the golden clause that frankly hardly ever worked, but everyone quoted it and said force majeure, and then the lawyers would look at it and say it doesn't work. Well, now the tenants are saying, I want it to work. And so if they have any leverage, they're coming back and they're saying, I want a new definition of force majeure. And guess what? Here it is. And it's everything that they learned. The other thing that we're kind of seeing is people focusing on, like in retail, co-tenancy kind of things, and how that might play out. Landlords are now all of a sudden worried about co-tenancy clauses, and they're saying, boy, I better sort of get me a little bit more stretch room on these clauses before the big boys can come beat me up. If somebody else is going to go out of shut down here for 6 months, I need some stretch on that. And the other thing, that's sort of the third thing we're seeing, not a lot of it, but enough to make it noteworthy, is revisiting to the common areas of shopping centers and how those are being used. There's a much bigger use now of call in and have it ready for you.
Sure.
And these properties aren't really set up that way to do that. And so a lot of people are renegotiating how the common areas are being used so that they can facilitate this type of thing. It's been interesting, Kurt.
Yeah, no, sure.
To see this kind of unfold in our world and this new norm, that is becoming the norm.
It's true, David. I mean, the business model that we knew is not the business model of today. And so, I like you suggested, I don't know that we'll ever return quite to where it was because,
right,
as you gotta plan and prepare for what the next, sort of outcome might be or situation. And so I think for those that were capable of pivoting and really hunkering down and had a solid, what we call at Century, a solid tech stack, we're able to, work fluidly, remotely. And, I see a blend. I see a blend when we return, sometime in office, sometime not in office. And so I think big companies are slow to kind of rush that back into play. I don't see a lot of construction modification. I think right now all that is happening at the education level with everybody trying to get back to school. So what I'm seeing is a lot of cleaning, a lot of sanitizing, a lot of signage, a lot of things to make people feel comfortable. But everybody's cautious, and I think that's fine. I think you need to be cautious because you have to deal with how is the employee feeling from a mental health, from a well-being perspective, and you certainly don't want to rush all of those people back and just have a disaster on your hands. So right. I think education is going to be the front runner in terms of where things go. The companies have sat back and said, we're going to wait till 2021, but school and education and the kids, getting them back. I think we're going to learn a lot, come fall as to best practices as to what's happening there. And hopefully everybody stays healthy. So listen, we try to keep this fairly quick. I'd love to have you back at a later date and get an opportunity to continue to discuss, a month or two from down the road, what the new norm continues to look like. And we'll put some information out on David Glissman, attorney David Glissman, and his firm, MacDermid Reynolds and Glissman. And you're on Farmington Avenue.
Yep. Thanks, Kurt.
What is the number? What is the number on Farmington?
86 Farmington Avenue. I'll be standing out actually 6 to 8 hours a day waving at cars as you drive by.
You're doing to-go lunches today, right? So listen, be well. I appreciate it. And we'll catch up soon. All right?
All right. Thanks again for having me.
You bet, Dave. Thanks so much.
Goodbye.